Hello, everyone, and welcome to Data Faces, the podcast that brings the human stories behind data, analytics, marketing, and AI to the forefront. I'm David Sweener, founder of Tiny Tech Guys, and your host for today's discussion. Today, I am super excited to be joined by Dr. Danny Stout. He's the product lead of the intelligence trader at EY. Danny has been in the AI game for quite a while. We worked together in the past, and I'm super excited to talk about the human and impact of AI and analytics. So when we talk about what really drives successful AI, we're talking about teams. I think why the human element is more important than ever. So let's get into it. Danny, welcome to the Data Faces podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much, David. I'm excited to be here, and it's good to be working with you once again for at least a little while.
Yeah, there we go. So I saw on your LinkedIn, a part of your profile says, I specialize in harnessing the power of GenAI and machine learning to drive innovation and transformation. And I noticed in your educational profile, you have a PhD in educational psychology. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are, and what you're doing in your current role.
Great. Thank you, David. Yeah, I call myself a data scientist by accident. I really thought that I would hate statistics and anything related to the math part of humanity. So it's whenever I was in my master's degree, I was going towards human relations, and I had a professor that was really a mentor to me, both in my education and also in my direction in a career. And he really made statistics lively for me. He really showed that statistics really is an interpretation of what we do as a worker and as a person in life. And it made it so attractive to me that I had to go, just like a true nerd, go for a PhD. And he had a PhD in educational psychology, and that's what I did too. They have a REMS cognate, which is a focus on research, evaluation, and measurement. And I actually did my dissertation on measuring medical knowledge and epistemology. So really exciting work in science. And it led me to be a data scientist. I got a job in Tulsa, Oklahoma, my hometown, where I met you, and started working for a company that develops Statistica. Worked at Dell for quite some time, designing predictive analytics systems for enterprise customers. Went to TIBCO with the Statistica product, continued to develop my predictive analytics skills, as well as being able to sell to those large customers and being able to convey the human aspect of technology. And that led me to Takeda. I was their global head of forecasting, pricing, and analytics for a while, for about 3 years, actually. And now I'm at Ernst & Young, where I am the director of a product line there. So really excited to be here. Long-winded answer to what I do, but the human element is really where I get my focus, and seeing how we can leverage that in any work that we do.
That's great, Danny. You have a very rich background, and you've been with a lot of companies. You've talked to a lot of companies, and today I think everybody's like tech obsessed, I'm going to call it, and we see an announcement probably nearly every day or every week. Hey, my model's bigger than your model, and I have 1 billion parameters, and I have this many billion more parameters, and how long it takes to change. So we've got these models and metrics. So what do you think we're missing when it comes to the team and culture and analytics and AI?
Great. So I really think, in this instance, bigger is not better. The bigger model is not better. The bigger application is not better. The bigger LLM is not better. And if you look back at past, we see real evidence of that. Even if you look at ensemble models, many small ensemble models outperform a larger model. And we're continuing to find that today. As we start to look at some of the LLMs, we start to see that some of the smaller language models are actually better for some applications. And guess how we're finding that out? By people using those models. So we're really able to see how we can harness the power of smaller applications within a larger system.
Yeah, does this imply that for every use case, I need to have potentially a different model running that's a small language model appropriate to the use case? Or how does even an organization think about that?
I think it's a lot of exploration, seeing what problem you're looking at, what the business or the people are trying to get out of it, and what the application really is for. So recently we were working on an application where we actually wanted to develop a large language model for a particular line. And we thought that by having a specialized model, it would actually outperform some of the other models, like the Azure models that are out right now, some of the Mistral models, some of the larger models that are very, very popular. And by actually looking at it and using it, we were able to see, and we did actually build a model, and it did not outperform. So I think we can have better utility by looking at what's at our hands and trying that out, and then seeing where the next step is going to lead us.
Okay. In our past experiences, then, we've seen a lot of, I'll just say, alignment issues in organizations or lack thereof. So, what role does the executive team and alignment in that executive team, how important is that for analytics and AI?
It's absolutely vital. If the team is not aligned beforehand, there's no way that whatever model you choose is going to be successful. The team has to be in alignment, and also the team has to understand what is trying to be solved, which is part of that alignment. I've seen very brilliant teams go to approach a problem, and because there's not alignment, it falls down. Even our time at Dell, whenever we were working with replacing the established predictive analytics platforms with the predictive analytic platform we were bringing in, there were groups that we went in and tried to just establish that foothold without buying in or getting the buy-in from the teams themselves. And each time we did it, it did not work very well. But when we invested the time and energy in going in beforehand and establishing that alignment, it went really, really smooth. So I continue to see instances in my past and in other companies where they don't invest that time and energy at the beginning, and it causes problems down the road.
So how can teams, gain that alignment? Is it alignment on, like, is everybody like, hey, we're pro AI, Gen AI, what have you, or is it selecting the right use case? Like, where's the alignment failure? Does product want to do one thing, sales want to do something else, and marketing even, a third priority? Like, where's the alignment breakdown?
They're asking the questions just like you just did, but not at the beginning. A lot of people want to go right for the technology and right to go for the solution without making sure to look and see where people are at before they even join the team. So for me, whenever I'm developing a team, the first thing that I want to do is I want to look at the skills that are needed, make sure there's a balance. The book that John Thompson wrote about building analytic teams is something that I've really focused on and made sure to integrate into the way that I weave teams together. And the second thing that I do is make sure and address any questions that the team members have before we begin the project. And that's where I think people fail to spend that additional time. They think it's going to be better to go ahead and get action, have your milestones, make the checks on the milestones, and get progress down the map. And they forget that everyone from product, everyone from technology or engineering, and everyone from architecture, as well as leadership, has to agree on what's the goal. And if they don't agree on what's the goal, at least agree on the direction that's being chosen.
That's really interesting to me. And you mentioned this from the perspective, you're a builder, so you build these systems. What I didn't hear in your answer is the end users, how it's going to impact my life. Are they often just sort of forgotten, or do you see them typically involved in the beginning, or they're like, well, the technology teams are going to plop down some technology, like, go use it? Like, what's been your observation over your career?
I've seen both instances. So I've seen instances where the end user was the focus, and you followed the typical model of going and working with the end user, finding what the needs are, building your features, and building that up into your epics. But there are also times, and unfortunately sometimes it's a business need, that you're going to have to use a new technology or a new approach to a problem. And the first one definitely succeeds more often than the latter. With the latter, there are times that it even gets a little bit punitive, that we have to do this, and if you don't do this, you need to find a job elsewhere. And there's also time that people have skills that don't translate as well. The new technology doesn't match their skills, and they have to learn new skills. So 3 different approaches and 3 different results.
Okay, really interesting. So let's just say Greenfield, you're going to design a new team to build some cool AI, what doodad. Who are your first 3 hires, and why are you picking these types of people?
Perfect. So my first 3 hires is someone who is technologically gifted. You have to make sure to meet the technological needs that are being presented in the doodad. The second one is someone who understands the business, but also understands the technology as well, because unless you have that ability to translate between the two, you're not going to get anything done. And the third person is someone who understands the background and the leadership that is in place, because unless your team is aligned with leadership and make sure that you have a bridge or a ladder in between where you're at and that bridge, it's again going to be unsuccessful. So you have your technology, you have your translator with the technology, but also is good with the business. And finally, that last one that is good with the behind the scenes type of infrastructure work, but also is that bridge or the ladder to leadership.
Interesting. What type of person would make so I get the technical piece, and so we can people can demonstrate that. How about this translator role? That's really fascinating to me. What sorts of qualities or attributes do you look for, or what is their background typically when you find this analytics or AI translator?
It's a person who has typically originated in the business but saw the need to develop technological skills and really focused or honed on those technological skills. And that's because that person typically is best at presenting and making sure to deliver some technological content in a way that leadership can consume. So often I've seen projects fail just because something wasn't communicated very well. And I've been able to go in a couple of those instances, look at what was being done, present it differently, not change any of the technology, and automatically get foothold. So that second person really has to be either embedded in the business or have understood the business, as well as understands the technology and can communicate it. And this person really, I typically look for in their education, if they've had any speaking or speech type of courses or certifications, but also has had some sort of maybe award or maybe some sort of notice or achievement about that ability to communicate those business needs.
Okay, that's interesting. And then I think we got the technology person, we have the translator person. You also mentioned the sort of bridge to the executive team. Who is that? What do they typically look like?
They typically look like the business person, but also has understood the longitudinal impact of the technology that they're starting to bring in. They can see that what they're bringing in is not going to get the foothold that's needed or is going to get the foothold that's needed, but understands the power dynamics that are in place in leadership as well. The technological team, the product team that's actually building it, they have to have some sort of a stakeholder that's going to be their champion. And unless you can work in the background, identify those champions and develop that relationship with leadership to do that, it's not going to succeed as well. So again, it's almost like the second person that I talked about, that this person is really focused on the relationships that go on in leadership, but also understand the background of what's going on as well. And typically, I've seen this person more in the architecture type roles. For some reason, the people who are in those architecture type roles have really developed those strong relationships with leadership and have been able to establish that foothold. Not always, but whenever I'm looking for that third person, I'm always looking for a person who understands those power dynamics and can start to work with leadership and with the product group.
Okay, very fascinating. And then maybe just to finalize this on the one you started with, the technology team, is what kind of skills are they have? All these generative AI solutions today, they can write pretty good code, and they can, if you know what questions to ask, probably do pretty decent data science. So are these mechanical skills that we prioritized in the past, are they changing? Are you seeing a change or an evolution in that?
Huge change. And that first person is typically a generalist and not a specialist, whereas in the past it may have been a specialist. So If we have to have a specialist, that's going to require a fourth person to the group. And that's because the tools that we have today are so good for a wide variety of applications. No longer do you need a neural network that's particularly tied to a particular language that's going to be deployed in a particular architecture. You're really looking at different types of models that are going to answer very general questions to the best of their ability, but then also have the room to grow for these specialized pockets. That way you can bring in that fourth person or that fourth team in order to bring that closer to realization.
Okay, and this is maybe an aside, a little bit off topic, Danny, but do you see this generative AI craze as the death of sort of drag and drop data science platforms or BI platforms, or are we gonna see something new on the horizon? Just love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be the death of it. I see some people really say that it's going to completely transform the way that we interact with technology. And in the long run, it will. I think the natural language capability of being able to develop a model is going to be the future. But we have too many people that are established in either a code first approach or even a low code approach where they have a little bit more control over the process. I'm actually working on a project right now where we want to build agents, but use natural language in order to actually build those agents. So you type in your prompt, and then it goes to, this is the planner that you need. These are the different personas of agents that you're going to need in order to present it. And this is the way that you're going to need to deliver those results. And it's going to be very, very exciting to do. And it's the future. It's where we're going in the future. But we also have to make that capable to be parameterized or controlled by external people, either through that code first or low code approach. So for me looking at it, I have to make sure that it is bridging to the future, but also supporting those people who are using the current technology or approach to technology.
Okay, so we're gonna have an army of agents. We can't even get companies to like monitor their predictive analytics. I can't imagine what they're gonna go through with all these bots of different things doing, all supposedly collaborating and doing different things. But we'll see. The future we don't know. But
and the guardrails around them too. The guardrails that we're going to have to put around it. It's like bumper cars, and you have to have your guardrails around your bumper cars.
You're bound to get bumped, so be ready for a jolt in your organization when things maybe go awry there. So let's talk a little bit about, do you see as soft skills, are they becoming more important versus the hard and fast, mechanical, technical skills, or what role do soft skills play?
I think they're going to be increasingly important. I think that because we're really relying on natural language in order to deliver or create some of the models, that you're going to have that ability to interpret the soft skills into something that's more technological. So we recently went and we're looking at a way to solve a problem within a particular service line. And we wanted a way to make it so that it was easily used by a particular group of people. And it was very difficult to do because we had to make sure and pay attention to those soft skills first. This group of people really didn't have the technological need or capability to do it. So our team had to make sure and specialize in their particular soft skills in order to deliver a product that was needed. So if my team weren't able to see the soft skills and interpret the soft skills, they wouldn't have been able to create the product in the way that was going to solve it for that service line.
So if we were just maybe to double click on the soft skills, what are a few specific types of soft skills that you think people need? We touched on communication earlier. What other types of skills you see becoming increasingly important?
Communication to a wide and diverse group of people. So often you're going to be in meetings with someone who is in DevOps, as well as possibly someone who's in the C-suite, especially as some of the smaller companies are developing very, very specialized technology that's going to be needed at all levels of the organization. And I see a lot of people who are very, very comfortable presenting to their particular peer group, but either presenting to someone in the C-suite or someone in a group that they may feel supports them. They don't deliver that message consistently. And it's not just consistently, but in the type of language that's going to be consumed by all groups of people. I spend so much time making sure to watch the dynamics of the room, to watch the dynamics of the people that are receiving the message, but also watching the dynamics of the people who've given me the answer to deliver to them as well. And you almost have to be hyper aware of all that's going on in order to convey that message appropriately. And often in the midst of that conversation, they lose the thread because they are either afraid or possibly feel a little bit more superior in some ways to the group of people that they're working with.
Interesting. And then what maybe a related question, when you look at teams, how important is, I guess I'm going to use the term diversity in the broadest sense, it could be, age, gender, ethnicity, what have you, the widest definition you could think of that. How important is having diverse teams when you're building these systems?
Absolutely vital. I think of diversity as kind of like the base of a pyramid. The top of the pyramid is only going to be as high as the base will support. So how diverse can we make the base of our team, our company, our project? And as we increase that diversity, we're going to see the height of that pyramid rise.
Wow. So like they could use like an old gray bearded person. That would be age diversity. That'd be fine.
It would be vital. It would be vital, David. Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. All right. Let's talk a little bit about, so, we opened up with your career and you have an extensive career across a large number of companies. You've done a lot of different things. Can you just maybe share an example where intuition or team dynamics really made a bigger impact than the actual technology?
Perfect. One of the ones that I'm thinking of immediately was a project where we were looking at theft of diamonds, actually. So we were actually looking at how a mining operation was going on, and you were able to see that the output of the project wasn't meeting what they estimated it should be. So they knew that something was going on, but we had to go in and be able to develop a model and to be able to find a way to measure and identify where in this process things were going awry. And we had to make sure that we were meeting the need of the people that we were going, because the people who were doing the theft were the people that we were possibly working with. Right. So you have to understand the dynamics of the people that you're working with, but also leadership as well. As we're delivering those results, we have to deliver it in a way that's going to be accessible and consumable by everyone that we're working with, but also with leadership as well. And by doing that, we made people believe, and because it's true, that human behavior can be measured and predicted by models. So we had to show them that. We had to say that it's going to improve what they're doing, and it did. But it also helped us to identify where in that process there were gaps, and we were able to communicate that as well. So it ended up being very, very successful, and it was a testament to the willingness of people to understand the math or the predictive analytics, but also appreciate the value that it's going to bring.
Wow. And Danny, did you get to go to the diamond mine, or tell us a little bit about the security? Because I'm just curious about this. You got people leaving. I'm sure it's pretty secure. I wonder if you could share for like your experience physically going there.
I think it ended with a strip search, so I'll just tell you. But it's you have to go to an area of the world that they don't have roads going in and out, and that little bitty tiny things have great value. So you have a black zone and a red zone. The black zone, you're not really in contact with any of the material. The red zone, you are. And everyone who has to go through the red zone has to go through a strip search. So it was my one and only time ever having to be submitted to a strip search at work.
So we should, no complaints for airport security from anybody after having to go through that, right? That's sort of a cakewalk, I would say.
I don't care about taking my shoes off, so it's as long as I don't have to take my pants
off. That's awesome. So Danny, what's like when people embark on these AI projects, and hopefully they start out with a business problem that they want to solve. What's the biggest maybe blind spot or unexpected things that they're going to encounter that you may understand that they're going to happen, but like people just getting into this might not understand. What aren't they seeing that they should?
Occam's razor is real. The simplest solution is typically the one that's going to fit, not just for the problem, but for the business as well. I know me, as a data scientist, I want to go to the fun stuff. And the fun stuff is how you're getting that large language model. What data was it trained on? How can we use it in other types of applications? I want to get to the stuff that's fun, because the human stuff is sometimes considered not fun. And unless you pay attention to it, you're not going to get the results that you want. And also, I want the big frilly thing. I want GPT 4300 281.x, and I want to be able to use it for this very specialized problem, and it's going to do a big whiz bang. And that's typically not it. Typically, it's just a little multiple regression that is going to be able to predict it with a very high degree of accuracy. So often it's the most simple solution that's going to fit. And as we start to leverage large language models, you're going to see that sometimes a different version of that model that's going to be tied to some grounded data may be a little bit better than this big, huge thing that is being advertised over here.
That's a little bit sad, Danny. I want to put generative AI on everything. So like you're still telling me I got to remember how to do regression. Maybe generative AI could do the regression for me. That'd be great. Happy medium.
That is it. That is it.
Maybe a question on guardrails. I know we're sort of talking about a lot of different topics, but you mentioned guardrails earlier, and these models, having been trained on the world's data, inherit all of the world's problems essentially. And there are vendors putting guardrails on the inputs and outputs there, but also as you implementing it within a company, you have to add an extra layer there. Like what kinds of guardrails do you consider, or for your projects are you looking at? Are they on inputs and outputs? Are they looking for like edge cases? Like, can you just describe it for people who heard the term guardrails but maybe don't quite know what they are?
For guardrails, I'm really thinking of those things that our projects are doing that are a little bit new and may have a significant cost tied to it, either financially or personally as well. So most recent example, we were working on a project and it would automatically create storage for us. And it spun up a PTU that over the course of 3 months incurred about $250,000 of cost. And it was because Exactly. So we did not build the guardrails into that in order to make sure you're not accidentally spinning up something that you don't need. So we want to make sure that whenever there's something that has a significant cost tied to it, we want to make sure that there's some guardrail around it that people can't just accidentally go, oops, and spend $250,000.
Okay. And then the types of generative AI that you're working on, are they, say, mostly text numeric output? Are you looking at voice, video, the multimodal images, everything? Just curious.
We're going for multimodal, but our particular use cases tend to be more text or unformatted text related, but also generating PowerPoints. We want applications that really generate a work product that can be carried and conveyed to other people. And that's because most of our function is really around consulting and being able to develop things that are going to be carried to another customer. If I were working in a different area, it would be a little bit different. But for us, in our particular use cases, that's where we are. Our applications, though, have to be able to support those edge cases. Not in all instances, but in some. So we still have to be prepared for things like video and things like audio as well, which we're working on to make sure that we can accommodate those needs when they arise.
Okay. Well, I need a PowerPoint generator because I hate making. Don't you think there's a better technology than PowerPoint? I mean, how old is this technology? I've tried a lot of AI presentation builders, and they stink, all of them.
I think we'll get rid of PowerPoints about the same time we get rid of Excel spreadsheets. So I think they're going to haunt us for the rest of my life anyway.
Oh my gosh, no hope. All right, so Danny, let's talk maybe about the little prognostication on the future here. So, what advice? Going to get back to the human part of this story. I went right to the technology, so shame on me. But what advice are you going to give to data analytics and AI professionals who want to lead, and not just write code? Because AI is changing every day. Like we mentioned earlier, there's a new announcement, there's a new technology, there's a new something every single day. So how do they keep up? And what's your practical advice for them? What can they do to maintain relevance?
The thing that I have actually, and this is a actual thing for me, is every person that I work with closely, I encourage them to get out and get every speaking engagement that they can get. And for me, I try to make sure that if I'm presenting in a meeting, they have the opportunity to co-present with me. And that's because without those presentation skills, they're going to be lost. They're going to be stuck in the position that they're in, and they're not going to be able to grow personally and professionally regardless. So I make sure that everyone has the opportunity to present, or at least get in front of people to present. And that's because whatever material you're getting from whatever application you're using, you're going to have to communicate to someone. So get those speaking skills in wherever you're at. And second is being able to communicate with the technology appropriately as well. So if you can't interact in natural language with technology and feel comfortable doing it, it's not going to work very well either. And I really had a limitation whenever I first started using natural language myself. I'm the type of person, if you have a Microsoft Word document, I like to reveal characters because I want to control how many spaces are in, and I still have to enter twice whenever I still have to space twice every time I type too. I can't stop myself from doing that. But you have to be able to interact comfortably with the technology too. So it was work for me, making sure that I could develop my prompting skills in a way that is going to be efficient too.
Okay, so what recommendations would you have for? So I'm hearing communication loud and clear, and understanding how to write prompts, but like what can people do to build up their communication skills? Is there a class? Is there an organization that you'd suggest for them to be able to practice this?
Wherever they're working, I've not seen a place that there's not an opportunity to do some sort of presentation where you're at. So no matter where you're at, I think there's the opportunity to do that. If not, there are things like Toastmasters. I've had people who have actually joined Toastmasters to start developing some speaking skills. And I've even had people go to college and take courses in college because there are courses in speech and things like that in every educational institution that I've found. So the cheapest way, of course, is to develop that where you're at, and it's also getting you some notice. I think it looks good on your resume and also on your reviews too. That I'm getting out and I'm doing presenting, and also leadership is going to notice you. Every place that I've been noticed because I deserve the ability to communicate between all people in an organization because I'm put the time and effort in to actually do it. So it's a wonderful way for people to actually communicate to other people and bring them into the process of bringing value.
All right, Danny. Communication is the most important thing. All right. So I guess the last question is, before we wrap, any final thoughts on what people can do to remain relevant beyond the communication, and where can people find you if they have questions and want to follow up?
What I'd recommend them do is actually dedicate some time to play with the applications. It sounds odd, but try to use that application outside of ways that are demanded by work, because you're going to start finding things that other people may not, just with that playtime. And then you can bring that into your work. With EYQ, the application that is key in my current role, it's a generative AI application used by about 400,000 people. And it's amazing. I'm very, very lucky and very appreciative of the opportunity to work with that application. But I dedicate maybe an hour a week to go out and just play with the application, not just what is in production, but also what's in UAT. I make sure to talk to people about what I'm finding when I'm playing with it, and it's helping me to develop skills and also contribute to the roadmap myself. But without that time to play and use it outside of what I'm directed to use it for, I wouldn't know that. So dedicate some time to play.
I love that. All your advice is very practical. You mentioned communication. Start communicating. Use your words where you are, and then use the application. So don't just read it. It's the active learning. I think is what you're hinting at. So get out and do it.
Yeah, and because what the technology we have now makes it accessible to anyone. Previously, you had to be able to code in a particular language and understand stochastic gradient boosting in order to develop a good application. You don't have to understand that now. You can actually use natural language to do it. So it's accessible to everyone. So there's a practical way for everyone to really get some skills with this.
Well, perfect. I love that. Well, Danny, this has been an amazing discussion. It's very insightful. I believe our listeners are going to get a lot of value from this. So thank you for joining the Data Faces podcast, and I'll see you out there.
Absolutely. My pleasure, David. Thank you for the opportunity.
Cheers.